All right, everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar about how certification can build trust in seafood. My name is Sean O'Laughlin. I work here in the education department as part of the outreach team at GSA. And I want to welcome you all to this webinar and let you know that we are going to have this recorded, and we're going to send that recording out to every person who registered for this. So if you know someone who registered but they weren't able to join us, let them know that they will get the recording of the webinar, including the question and answer session at the end. If you do have questions or comments throughout this presentation, please go ahead and type them into the chat box down in the bottom right corner of this site. We will see every comment and every question. If your question doesn't show up, it's because we put it in a separate bucket so we can save it for questions at the end, but we do see everything that gets submitted, so don't worry about that if you don't see it pop up right away. I had Sherri Clerk, who's a part of our outreach team and BAP marketing team. She did this presentation for us, and she is going to be available here live after the presentation ends to answer your questions. So I really encourage you to pump in any questions that you have, and we'll be happy to go through those and answer as many as we can. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and play this presentation. Please enjoy it. If you're having technical issues, you can type them into the comments as well, and I'll see if there's anything that I can do on my end to help you out. But I think we're good to go. Everything seems to be working. So please enjoy this presentation, and we'll answer your questions afterwards. Thanks.
I'm Sherri Clerk, brand strategist with Global Seafood Alliance, and we're going to review market research findings, assess study implications, discuss how BAP standards address key consumer and operator concerns, outline ways to grow the market for seafood, and then we'll leave times for question and answer at the end. Feel free to type questions into the chat box as we go. We're excited to share with you some research. This is our first formal research project that we have done to date. We engaged with changing taste and conducted an insight study to explore awareness and influence of the best aquaculture practices logo in the United States. This market was important for us because it's the world's largest market for fish and seafood. We had 3,000 US adult consumers and 400 purchase decision makers or operators. So we had representation from both the commercial and non-commercial segments. We looked at seafood eating and purchasing habits, attitudes about aquaculture, and how either may vary by eating habits and demographic. The timing was right for us. After spending over 20 years building the BAP program, we underwent a rebrand in 2019. We updated our logo, made it more consumer facing, and now we believe it's time to start talking to consumers. So what did we learn in our research? Consumers want to eat more seafood. The number of consumers who don't eat fish and seafood has remained stable through the pandemic. The number of restaurant food service channels that offer fish has also remained stable through the pandemic, but most consumers still eat seafood a few times a month, but intend to increase the frequency. So consumption of fish and seafood has risen, but not at the same rate as other proteins. As you can see on the chart here, operators, fish and seafood are important purchases for operators at 76% and 46% respectively. So although not on top, they are still key protein options. COVID-19 has not really interrupted the correlative relationship between purchase and consumption. Most people purchase seafood to consume it, and 34% eat seafood about once a week and 32% once or twice a month. Only 5% of consumers eat seafood more frequently than they purchase it. There's historically been a slow growth in seafood consumption. was up 2 pounds per person per year per the latest government calculations. But there's room for improvement when you compare chicken consumption that rose approximately 20% per person per year over the same time period. So over 65% of people purchase and eat seafood only once a week or less. There's a significant opportunity to drive consumption in this group and try to get them to consume seafood more frequently. The good news is that consumers want to change. They're still substantially increased in eating more fish and seafood instead of red meat. In fact, it's their top choice for replacing fish and their top choice for replacing meat is with fish and seafood. As you'll see here, 32% of people want to eat less red meat. And 39%, the bar on the far left, want to replace it with fish and seafood, followed by poultry at 35%. And then next is people that don't necessarily want to replace meat, but consume smaller amounts of this. And interestingly, the number of consumers who eat meat on a regular basis was down 8% in 2019. But those who intend to increase consumption of plant-based meat and soy-based foods is down by half, with double negatives at 38 and 37% respectively. So there's an opportunity. Consumers are interested in eating more fish and seafood, and it's grown over the past decade. But the concerns about ocean health issues have limited this follow-through and substantial increases in consumption, especially when you compare it to other proteins. So what is keeping people from eating more fish and seafood? When you look at consumer aversions to eating, slave labor increased in 2020. In 2019, consumers were most averse to heavy metals, mercury, radiation, slave labor, and plastic contamination. And in 2020, those concerns about slave labor increased. Similarly, slave labor is also a top concern for operators. Operators are unlikely to menu anything that has used slave labor, has mercury, heavy metals, radiation, or plastic contamination. And this aligns with consumer preferences, but also has a higher barrier to purchase than consumers. Risk mitigation is important for operators, an important part of their corporate social responsibility initiatives. The foundation of the BAP program is built on 4 pillars: food safety, animal health and welfare, including antibiotic use, environmental responsibility, and social welfare, with a focus on good labor practices. Food safety is overwhelmingly the most important factor when purchasing fish and seafood for both consumers and operators, as you can see in these charts, with 65% for consumers and 75% for operators. This is not surprising if you think that people don't want to get sick or risk getting anyone else sick with seafood. Improved understanding of issues addressed in the BAP standards can not only change their program awareness, but also increase their trust in our program and their establishments. So BAP program covers the full production chain from hatchery to feed mill to farm and processing plant. So full production chain coverage. And the processing plant and farm are most important for operators. It's important to note that the BAP program has a seafood processing plant standard, and it's the only seafood-specific processing plant standard with the ability to address unique issues to seafood. All areas of the supply chain are important, and complete coverage is unique to BAP. So how do BAP standards address key concerns? BAP addresses social accountability and is dedicated to elevating human rights and working conditions in aquaculture. Standards cover issues such as wages and benefits, working hours, hiring in terms of employment, employee health and safety, staff facilities, personal protective equipment, child labor and young workers, forced, bonded, indentured, trafficked, and prison labor, discrimination, discipline, abuse, and harassment, and freedom of association and collective bargaining. On-site worker interviews are an essential part of the BAP auditing process. Food safety is addressed through third-party food safety testing. BAP is the only aquaculture certification program in the world that offers a rigorous and robust third-party food safety and residue testing program. We have chain of custody labeling, and it's mandated for every product that carries the BAP logo to ensure traceability throughout the production chain. Antibiotic screening is conducted. BAP standards require screening for residue of antibiotics, drugs, and other chemical compounds. A withdrawal period is required to prevent antibiotics in farm seafood when harvested. And BAP monitors the Food and Drug Administration alerts and import refusals for BAP products. Environmental responsibility is addressed with mangrove and wetland conservation. Our standards ensure aquaculture producers are not located in mangrove or other wetland areas where they may displace important natural habitats. Our standards require that aquaculture facilities monitor their effluents and water quality. Facilities with cages are also required to monitor surrounding waters. Biodiversity and wildlife is protected, and BAP requires that producers have a plan in place to manage wildlife interactions in a humane way. BAP standards also require farms to monitor feed inputs to help minimize the amount of fish meal and fish oil derived from wild fisheries. And since storage and disposal and waste were key issues for consumers and operators, it's important to note that BAP standards ensure producers properly store and dispose of feed, fuel, chemicals, and other items in a responsible way. Animal welfare is addressed through stocking density. BAP's maximum stocking density ratio is 2.5% to 97.5% water. Regular inspections are conducted to make sure that they culture the facility, the water quality, the behavior and conditions of the animals. They ensure humane slaughter, which includes humane methods of stunning. Animals are transported under conditions that ensure a high level of animal welfare and minimize distress. And antibiotics are only used when medically necessary, and BAP prohibits routine and prophylactic antibiotic use. So through our vigorous standards that are third-party verified and benchmark, our program has been built on integrity, and those who know BAP trust BAP. Consumer trust in BAP has a strong influence on purchasing decision. 46% of consumers are positively influenced by the label when making their purchases. Consumers generally shop at a channel that favors one scheme and do not regularly have to choose among them. They make their protein choices and want to eat more fish and seafood. As you can see on the chart on the right, the brand awareness is 18%, which is not surprising given that we haven't actively promoted to consumers to date. But it's important to note that 75% are influence. There's an influence on purchase. So those that see the logo or understand the program are definitely impacted by changing their purchase patterns. There's also an influence over other proteins at 64%. BAP has a strong positive operator influence as well at 56%. 56% have a favorable view of distributors that use BAP. Awareness is similar at 19%, but influence and purchase, slightly less than consumers, but still quite significant at 64%. So for those that know BAP, it's a compelling offer that influences choice among fish and seafood products and also influences decisions to increase fish and seafood over other protein choices. Certification can build trust in seafood, and labels and marks are capable of driving this meaningful increase because lack of awareness of responsible practices are inhibiting purchasing decisions. And BAP can deliver assurances in these key areas of concern. So it's nice to see logo on pack and consumers paying more attention when they shop. And in summary, the BAP logo positively influences which fish and seafood to choose for over 40% of consumers and operators. It also influences over 50% to choose fish and seafood over other proteins. Though the awareness of the BAP logo is low, there's little drop off in the trust and influence among consumers and operators. And for those who know BAP, it's a compelling offer that does influence choice. The research also looked at demographic patterns, and millennials purchase seafood and value certification. Millennials are also defined as Generation Y. These are individuals who are born between the 1980s and early 2000s. They're considered to be a technologically savvy and connected generation. Millennials have the power to drive change. They have the highest recognition of BAP. Over half of millennials already purchase seafood, at least occasionally for their household, and even more consume seafood at least once a week. The BAP logo makes nearly 50% of millennials think more positively of the store, and this is more impact than on any other group. Healthy eating is a strong motivator, especially for foodies. A foodie is defined as someone who has a particular interest in food. I like to try new recipes, interested in cooking and new food trends. So healthy seafood that is easy to prepare and tastes good is a win-win and has the potential to get this group to eat fish more than 2 times per week. The health aspect of fish and seafood is important because 80% of millennials try to eat healthy or carefully monitor their diet. So small change can make a big difference. We plan to target millennials and increase from sometimes and occasionally to frequently. By eating seafood at least twice a week has the greatest health benefits. It's an achievable goal. When you think about adding seafood twice a week, you could do it for lunch once a week and for dinner once a week and accomplish that goal. So what do we do now? We can work together to grow the market. The obstacles to converting intent to purchase and consumption can largely be overcome by BAP and other GSA standards by building trust. BAP is already influential with the demographic segments that can drive this growth, and industry partners can benefit from investing time and resources to promote BAP. This study and other similar studies by Changing Taste show that the market landscape is positioned for a much higher level of fish and seafood consumption. So how can you make an impact? You can use BAP to cultivate more frequent consumption among younger demographics, and a collective effort can make the biggest difference. So for producers, get certified. If you're already certified, make sure you're using the BAP logo on pack. If you're a food service operator, ensure you're sourcing BAP products and educate your staff and patrons about responsible seafood. For retailers, you can educate your seafood counter personnel and customers via print or digitally. Ensure your suppliers are using the BAP label and educate about your responsible sourcing policy. For consumers, look for the BAP label and ask your local restaurant or retailer about responsible seafood. You can help drive change. We believe education is key. The delivery of credible information about seafood to consumers and purchasing decision makers can help drive change. This includes information about responsible sourcing, as well as where to buy, how to prepare, and what makes seafood so good for me. We're all in this together. So the hesitation with the excellent protein source of fish and seafood can be overcome with education. We think one way to educate is through a promotion campaign. And we're planning to do a campaign in October of 2022 for National Seafood Month. And our objectives of our campaign are to further increase seafood consumption by clearing up misconceptions about seafood. We'd like to increase from a few times per month to a few times per week consumption patterns. And this is consistent with a Seafood Nutrition Partnership recommendation, as well as other health organization recommendations. I'd like to educate on the BAP label and associated assurances, increase BAP awareness, trust, and influence via multi-channel education. So this could be digitally, via websites, through social media, in print, in store, through videos, to try to reach consumers the best way they learn and the best way that engages them. BAP can drive more frequent fish and seafood consumption among key demographics and grow the market for fish and seafood overall. So stay tuned for our North American campaign for National Seafood Month 2022. We're really excited to spread the word about all the benefits of seafood and responsible sourcing. So thank you again for your time. Please feel free to reach out to us or type your questions into the chat box. You can see my emails below, and Elise Avalon, she's also an amazing contact. She's manager of certification marketing here at Global Seafood Alliance, and her email can also be found on this slide.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed that presentation by Sherri, and I have Sherri here right next to me. She's here to answer any questions you may have. So if you do have questions, please go ahead and type them into that chat box now, and we'll make sure as things come up that we get them on the screen so we know what people are asking and we getting you the information that you need. Sherri, can you want to go ahead and you got a couple things to say before we get into questions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, thank you for joining us today. And we've seen a couple of questions appear in the chat box. And one of the questions that came up a couple of times was where the study was conducted. And we started with the United States. This was our first market research study, so it was just the beginning. We do intend to do more market research in the future and have more of a global presence because we are trying to grow the understanding of the program nationally, or internationally rather. We will be sending out the recording with the presentation after, so you will all have access to that. That's a question that just came in. We're happy to share the presentation. We have another question here. I'd suggest that you work to expand your sphere of influence, producers, retailers, consumers, food service operators, and host communities. That's a great suggestion. And of course, this is just one area that we're focusing on right now with consumers, but that certainly doesn't mean that we won't address the other influence, because that is very true. But this particular campaign that we're talking about for National Seafood Month is for North America because it is our largest market currently, and we will try to build the brand in the United States as well as other countries, and we'll work for a plan for the other countries. Do we have any other questions?
Here we go. Some coming in.
What kind of activations do you have planned for Seafood Month 2022, and what markets? Again, this will be North America. We're working with some retailers currently, so it's going to be across the U.S. Not to say that we can't do other markets, but since it is National Seafood Month in the United States, that's where our focus will be. We're working on it like an influencer campaign, so social media. We'll have digital assets available. We're going to be making some point of sale that could be available for anybody who wants to use in store. So the goal is to have a number of different avenues to communicate. Another key area is educating seafood personnel that work behind the counter, because sometimes they get questions and aren't clear how to address the questions and some of the myths about seafood. So we're trying to provide this audience with some tools that they can use when they get questions from customers. And this will also build the relationship with the store and the trust with the store or the retail establishment. The national campaign directed toward consumers. It's directed toward consumers, the national campaign for this year. Which one? Okay.
And again, if you get questions later on after this presentation is over, we will be sending out the presentation to everyone so you can review it. But you can also get in contact with Sherri and or Elise about any questions that come up later on after we're finished with this.
So our call to action, that was a question. What will our call to action for the campaign be? So it's going to be look for the BAP logo and purchase seafood, consume seafood twice a week. So that's going to ultimately increase the purchasing patterns. That's our goal. And this could help operators as well, because if consumers are ordering it in a restaurant to get one of their 2 times per week, it's certainly going to accomplish their goal. And a lot of times people tend to consume it in a restaurant because they're more comfortable with the preparation. In terms of the promotion, some other things we're intending to do is do some eye-catching food photography, some recipes, some simple ways to prepare, because sometimes one of the main reasons why there's hesitation is consumers don't know how to prepare. And there's so many different species to choose, and then cooking methods can be adjusted for other proteins. So you can still use different ethnic flavor profiles or different cooking methods. If you choose to purchase seafood and then consume it later, you have access to frozen products. So maybe overcoming some hurdles to the perception of frozen seafood, because it actually is very fresh. If you thought, you can make that an easy and healthy meal for a family during the week without not purchasing it to consume it the same day. So those are some ways to educate and try to make it easier for consumers to eat more seafood and prepare it at home. So yeah, we say call to action, look for the BAP label and eat seafood twice a week. We are planning to be at the Boston Seafood Show. Yes. As far as presentations, I don't know that we know exactly. Yeah, we'll have a booth. So you're welcome to meet us at the booth.
I don't know if this is information that you have, Sherri, but
do you get most engagement on social from the Millennial group? Generally speaking, yes, but we're going to be doing more targeted social media. So we will have more metrics on this that we can share post promotion, post campaign. So we'll definitely be able to share more on that.
All right, I think we'll give a couple more minutes. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes if anybody else comes up with any questions before we sign off. But like I said, if something comes up after this ends, the presentation will be sent out to everyone, and it has Sherri and Elise's contact information on there, so you can send your question to them if you need it.
And we'll be sending more information about the campaign in the new year to share more details and campaign components and assets. So you can stay tuned for that. Is there any data study that shows BAP certification specifically built trust with the consumer, lifted sales for a processor? I did not see a specific reference in the presentation that has been sent for moderation. Particular sales lift for a processor. We do not have that specific data.
But it spoke to trust.
It spoke to trust with consumers. So they asked about the influence of the BAP label in their purchasing, and if they trusted the BAP label, if it changed their perception of the store and of the protein. So yes.
That's Peter. Hi, Peter. How's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Yes, we do plan to do more research. We're investigating that for the future. This was our first attempt at research, and we are very happy with what we learned. And since we just underwent the rebrand in 2019, we definitely plan to expand the research and also our marketing efforts internationally, including Latin America. So yes. Is there research that show improvement on the environment through the support or purchase of BAP? We'll have to get back to you on that one. Elise, you?
I would just say that's something that I think we learned through our audit reports. What changes companies made to better their practices. So I think that's the type of data that we could get from audit reports. But in terms of market research, we don't have that specifically at this time.
All right, Sherri, what do you think? Want to wrap it up?
Sure. Thank you again. If you have any questions that you think of after the session, please feel free to email Elise or I, and we're happy to help find the answer, get the answer to you. And we look forward to sharing with you our plans for 2022 in the new year.
Yep, we'll send everything out in this presentation as well as the entire webinar with the question and answers that we just did. Will be available on the GSA YouTube channel as well, so you'll be able to view it there. And look forward to staying in contact with you. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.